The views expressed on the Badge to the Bone podcast, while often accurate and sometimes even funny, are not intended to represent the official positions of any law enforcement, public safety agency, or their employees. So lighten up. This podcast contains mature themes, strong language, violence, and nudity. Okay, maybe not the last two. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Badge to the Bone podcast. I'm Denny,
I'm Al.
and we are back for another episode, and I think you're going to like it. Al, are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready. Let's get going.
Lots to talk about, so let's jump in.
So, Denny, you found our guest tonight.
I did. Chris Scallon.
Yeah, yeah. I looked him up, and
Yeah?
there's a. Yeah, I got. It was a lot. There's a lot on that man's resume.
Yeah, lots, and that's, doesn't even, I mean, it's a whole lot.
Yeah,
It's impressive.
and you know what? I hadn't heard about his program, Trauma Behind the Badge.
Right.
I hadn't heard of that until you brought it up, and then I went and started digging through their website, and wow.
Yeah. So I first heard Chris at and we've talked about it before on the show, the Impact of Trauma for Law Enforcement conference that is done here in Virginia. And Chris was actually there for the first one, and he's been there for most of the conferences since then. And, I got to hear a good portion of his story and everything that he went through, and it is, I mean, tremendous.
I mean, if it's just a fraction of what I saw on paper on the website, it's yeah. I'm very eager to hear what he has to say tonight.
Yeah, and that's why I really wanted to get him on Badge to the Bone. I just remembered how much of an impact his story was for me, and he's just very real. He's just straightforward, real. This is what it is. Doesn't polish anything up. Doesn't try to clean anything up. This is just is what it is, and delivers it just like that. And it was impactful for me, so I thought he would be a great guest to have on here.
Well, I think he's standing by, so why don't we go ahead and get him on, because I really want to hear his story.
All right, Chris, welcome to Badge to the Bone.
Chris, great to have you.
Hey guys, it's awesome, man. I appreciate the invite. It sounds like you guys are doing some awesome work, man.
Well, we're trying, and as we're getting people on, I definitely thought of you. We crossed paths at that Impact of Trauma conference that Virginia puts on with DCJS, and I remember you being there, and just you were one of the folks definitely that just resonated, and I think it was just your real approach to everything, and the way you spoke to
Oh, I
everybody was
appreciate
just very
it. Yeah.
real and genuine, and that really resonated with me.
No, I appreciate that's that's the kind of I go to a lot of conferences, both attending and presenting, and I don't ever want to knock anybody, although I will if I actually sat through a presentation where somebody stole mine and presented it, and I was like, I think I know this one, but I don't want to knock anybody because it's their thing, and public speaking for the majority of people is kind of tough, so it can be a little awkward at times. But there tends to be a very politically correct sort of spin on a lot of stuff. And I'll give you an example. I was asked to present at the Department of Justice, specifically on a suicide prevention um, panel. So I was on the dais, and one of the people that was on the dais is oh God, of course I'm going to Violante. John Violante. He's a professor out of Buffalo, New York. He is the be all end all of academics when it comes to the research of law enforcement suicide. There is not an article or research that's done that has not cited him. Just a phenomenally smart individual and just very analytical, and it's just really good information. And so I got a chance to meet and speak with him, and that was, for me, that's kind of like, that's kind of like my rock star guy. Like, oh man, it's pretty cool to meet somebody and on a lot of stuff that I did research on when I was in my postgraduate work, and going through, what I was going through. And there was a couple other folks there. Now all this is on YouTube. You can actually you can actually look it up. But I don't
All
like
right.
wearing suits. I'm retired. I worked homicide for a long time, and I aside from my time working undercover with long hair and beard, I was always clean cut and stuff. So when I retired or on my way retiring, I was like, I'm not wearing suits anymore. I don't represent an agency. If you don't like it, you guys can kiss my ass. That's just one of those things that I was about. So so my wife was like, "Hey, you should wear at least a button-down shirt." And I was like, "All right, whatever." So I wore a button-down shirt and jeans and I think like a hat or something, whatever. And I'm on this dais with obviously with Dr. Violante and a couple other folks, and they're talking about suicide. And there was a moderator, and they kind of let me they would kind of prompt you when they want, and it was at Department of Justice. So, and they were getting a new director at the time. There was a lot of pomp and circumstance going on, and it was just, I felt like I was like, man, I am a turd in the punch bowl with this thing. So I was like, whatever, they invited me. I'm here. They're recording it, whatever. And my intent's never to like, shit on the people that are asking me to go there, but I'm not gonna bullshit anybody when I'm doing my stuff, right? So they're talking about it, and one of the people there was like, "Oh, I, I remember hearing about somebody that was suicidal," and that I heard that, I'm like, "Hmm, what the hell is this?" And there was another professor that I wasn't familiar with. They're like, "Oh, we're kind of doing background stuff and this on the blah blah blah." So it gets to me, and I said, "I got a question. Who on this board has actually tried to kill themselves?" So it's just me. So I'm the only guy on the board that tried to kill himself. And we have a dais of people talking about this that have no idea. And I said, all respect, Dr. Violante. Obviously, he knows his shit, right? And again, I don't take anything away from academics, but I found it so. This is a common theme. You'll get experts or subject matter experts that have absolutely no practical experience. So what does suicide look like? In my eyes, I was like, it's fucking ugly. It's ugly. It's dark. It's embarrassing. There's a lot of shame around it. There's all this stuff. That's what people need to hear. They don't need to hear a cleaned up version, a sterile version of, and then you should try to refocus your energy on trying to calm yourself with breathing and stuff. Try to tell somebody who's about to fucking kill themselves to breathe.
That's not going to fucking
Really?
work.
Right. Yep.
See, that's like, if anybody's done hostage negotiation, and I've done it, I've taught it, both to the FBI and locally and around the country. You have to be real. And so one of the big things, especially like I walked away from there going, these people are never gonna fucking invite me to anything ever again. I was fortunate they did. They kind of appreciated that. But I get that a lot because I don't sugarcoat stuff when stuff is, I don't think it serves the guy or girl that's struggling. Uh, it doesn't do them justice. They don't want to hear oh my God, that's so bad. And I remember I was teaching a class on um, dealing with individuals in crisis, and I said, let's role play a little bit. I'm not a big fan of the role play, but let's just role play. And I said, just come up with anything that you've heard. You can make it up or whatever. And somebody said, yeah, I was thinking about killing myself and this and that. I'm like, holy shit, that's horrible. God bless. I mean, I can't even imagine what you're going through, kind of doing the role play thing. And so we took a pause, and the individual came up to me and goes, all right, I don't understand what just happened. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you reacted to what I told you. I said, yeah. He goes, well, we were always taught, remain calm. You don't want to bring more drama to the situation. I said, so if you told me you wanted to kill yourself, and I was like, okay, what the fuck is that doing? I mean, that's how is it being real? If somebody
Right.
says some off the wall shit, like it's okay to react to it. I'm not judging. I'm like, holy shit, that's horrible, blah blah blah, and just be real with it. That's what we need more of. And we also, and I'm so tired of these different places. And I don't care if it deals with trauma, mental health, substance, and that they sugarcoat it and they kind of, again, like the sterilization of it, and be fucking real with it. What does it look like? Yeah, people are going to talk about you when you decide to go to treatment for 30 days. Who do you know that's on the job that goes on a vacation for 30 days? I I've yet to meet that person, right? So it's like maybe a week or 2 off, but 30 days
You're
on the
right.
dot, and then you're coming back.
You're right.
You're not at work, you're at limited duty, or,
You are
so
out
what do
for
you do
a
in that
reason.
situation? And, I tell people,
Right.
you be you. Yeah. It's just I
No,
don't
I
know, I
think
feel,
that's
for
important.
me, I think people get more from that genuine. I tell them about the ugly stuff that I went through. I tell them the dark places. I didn't get here because I was like, "Hey, I'm going to go to school and learn how to talk to fucking unhappy people." I was an unhappy person, and I struggled with drinking, with using pharmaceuticals, with fucking suicidal ideation. Third marriage. I mean, I'm a fucking rock star. I should have my PhD in fucking up relationships. You know what I mean? But that's where it comes to. So to hear you say that, it means a lot to me. That's because that's the point I'm trying to get across.
Well, no, it's true. I mean, that was what I needed to hear, and I think I can give you a run for your money on the fucking up relationships, but but that's what I needed to hear. I didn't need to hear somebody giving me that academia approach. I needed to hear that real. This is what it is.
Well, it's that the importance of the human connection as opposed to something that's just dry and clinical.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But hey,
I did a
Chris, I know.
I was speaking at yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
brother. I'm sorry.
I think we had a. No, no, you go ahead. Sorry.
Uh, I was speaking at I think it was for IACP. I was in California or something like that. There was a project where they were bringing in a lot of the folks from the community activists to talk about this and that and blah blah blah. And this one, I think she was from Oakland. She may have been from Oakland or Compton or something. And she gets up and she quoted Nas, right? And so she quotes this pretty powerful verse of Nas, and I'm like, oh man, she stole my fucking thunder because I quote "Be Real" from Cypress Hill. I'm a kid. I grew up in the '70s and '80s, so that's my jam, right? And she's like, and she goes, "You cops and or pigs or what?" I mean, this. By the way, ICP brought her in, right? And I was like, "Oh, I love this girl already." She goes, "You
Of
pigs don't
course,
understand the struggle and this and that and this and that." And I just kind of soaked it up. I was like, "Cool, I get it." And because I'd lost some family members to violence, whether it be gang violence and all that good stuff. And so I get up there and I said, I just want to say, when I deal with first responders or vets or anybody for that matter, but mostly first responders or vets, I'm reminded of a very powerful quote from a learned man, and that person is "Be Real" from Cypress Hill. And of course, everybody's like, "What the hell is this cop doing?" Right? And I said, he said this quote that really resonates with me when I'm talking with somebody, and it's, "How do you know where I'm at when you haven't been where I've been? You understand where I'm coming from?" Now, the rest of the lyrics goes into like shooting people and smoking weed, but that's not what I'm trying to get the takeaway from. It's, how do you know where I'm at if you haven't been where I've been? That's the that's the big thing, right? And so I get done doing my thing, and I explain my history with my family members and the violence. I grew up, in Colombia, South America, and then I moved to Brooklyn, New York. So I kind of went from violence to violence. I grew up in Brooklyn where the height of the crack epidemic, and just it was crazy, right? And so I get off the stage thing and I'm sitting down and this girl makes a beeline towards me. She goes, "You have changed my entire outlook on cops." I said, How so?" She goes, "You had the same upbringing that I did." I said, "Do you think I'm the only cop that's had a shitty fucking life or that grew up in violence or poverty? No. We all have you decided to do this. I decided to do this. That's it. We got more in common than we don't." Man, so I sitting down with her, and it's funny because you see all the suits and everything that are on the job, and chiefs and all that. It's kind of sitting in a corner, and it's me hanging out with like the community activists. I'm hanging out with like some of the tribal nations, and the guys from Oakland and Compton and all these, and because that's that's where I fit in, I think, a little bit more. And not that they don't. I think if they just got from behind the suits and from behind these badges, I think there's more in common. So for me, it's about connection. It's about being real. And I tell this to people all the time. If if I don't know how to help you, I guarantee you I know one or two people that does know how to help you, or that has a shared experience that could probably pull from that and that was successful. So that's all it is. It's just fucking talking to another human.
Yeah, no doubt. I hope you're still there.
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Did
I'm
we
sorry.
lose you? Okay, so no,
No, I'm good.
I might have lost you for a second, but you know, man, I think that's man, I really think that's true. I think that
Well,
connection, that relatable connection,
it's
is what makes a
it's
difference.
critical. It's
Yeah.
critical. So you started talking about your upbringing, having grown up at least in part in Columbia and then going to Brooklyn. How did you find your way into law enforcement?
Oh, that's. I mean, so I lost a family member to gun violence in Brooklyn, involved in gangs, and I remember I had to make a decision. I said, what do I do? Do I go the gang route? Because I'd come here, I didn't speak English when I first got here. I learned English, and uh, uh, let me back up a little bit. So I was born actually in London. My mother was traveling at the time, and then we went back to South America, and then from South America, because it started getting really violent, especially with the Medellin Cali cartel wars and stuff like that. And if you ever want to see an actual depiction of what Colombia was like in the 70s, going into the 80s, watch Narcos, the first one.
Oh
It's and
gosh,
Javier, who
Jeez. Yeah.
phenomenal guy. It's again, it's they use actual footage and stuff. Anyway, so come to Brooklyn in the 80s, and it's again very violent. Uh, Learning to speak the language. I'd learned in growing up, but I wasn't again fluent or anything. So kind of learning that family member gets killed in a gang violence, and I remember I had there was it was I can vision it's like a crossroads. It's like, so what do I do? Do I go the gang route? Because I could have easily done that. I mean, that's it's within my nature to do it, or do I try to help people, right? And this plays a role in, and kind of reflected a lot on this and did a lot of research. And just real briefly to kind of skip ahead is when I deal with folks that are doing a specific job in law enforcement, the great majority of people that let's say work sex crimes have either witnessed, intimate violence or were victims of intimate violence or sexual assault and stuff like that. And for me, I grew up around drugs and violence, and so for me there was no. It makes sense now that why I would go to and work narcotics and then work homicide and all this stuff, right? So anyway, so I go through that, and I decided I wanted to help, so I went and became a medic, um, and so I started working as a medic, and then I worked in Long Island as a firefighter. Uh, after my time as medic, and then I was doing like dual duty over there as well. And then I decided I'm going to join the military. So I wind up joining the military. I was deployed uh, with some pretty amazing people. Got hurt in an explosion. Couldn't do the job I was doing in the military. I'm a gunner's mate by trade, and I was working with some pretty high speed individuals, and decided that I would not re-enlist to go do something. I don't want to say lesser. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So I was on terminal leave from the military when I decided I'm going to apply to the fire departments and the police departments. And Norfolk, Virginia Police Department, first one to call me back. I wish there was like I'd always wanted to work. I didn't give a shit where I worked, but I knew I wanted to do it. I went to the academy and they were like, "Hey man, have you ever bought drugs?" And I'm like, "No." And they were like, "All right, would you like to go to narcotics?" I said, "Fuck yeah, I would." And again, first 13 years, just everything, murder for hires, bought every kind of dope, did a lot of stuff with a lot of agencies, FBI, did some stuff with the CIA and ATF, and all just a ton of stuff. I was on Condoleezza Condoleezza's the Secretary of State's protective detail for about 4 years. Went through there, the Bureau of
Wow.
Diplomatic Security's academy, and um, so again, I was fortunate. I've really done a lot of stuff, and so throughout my career, I did that. Started working what we call criminal intelligence, which was our liaison to all federal agencies, and again, I worked undercover with the pro-lifers, Army of God, David Crane, all these folks that are bombing like clinics and stuff. ALF, ELF, the Animal Liberation Front, Environmental Liberation Front. A lot of people don't know this, but in Norfolk, Virginia, it's the headquarters of PETA. So anytime there's a circus, all these fucking wackadoodle people come out, and they're the people that like Alf will let the minks loose from the facility, and then they all get hit by fucking trucks on the interstate, because they're making a difference or chain themselves to a tree anyway. But, we had bombings of abortion clinics or death threats and stuff. Actually had one in Norfolk, but also in Virginia Beach where they bombed the clinic, and so I was involved in all that stuff, and then wound up working a pretty big case with the FBI, and uh, while I was in narcotics and everything, and or in criminal intelligence, and my face got kind of shared. This is like MySpace days, and so somebody emailed the picture. I was in Central America, working with like 18th Street MS-13, and so kind of got blown up, and so I couldn't be doing that anymore. So I was tasked with running long-term undercover operations. Kind of going like kind of being a player, and then all of a sudden you can't be the player anymore, so you got to be a coach, which I thought was a punishment at the time. And at that time, I'd been involved in you know multiple shootings. It's never really I never killed anybody. I've been involved in some shit where you're like, oh man, how did nobody get killed or getting shot at? Or I've been in some pretty crazy places by myself, no gun, inside the middle of a dope house, or just crazy stuff. And wound up going to homicide. Really enjoyed my time over there. I remember the biggest anxiety for me was if I had arrested you and I was in narcotics or criminal intelligence, you were done. You didn't have to talk to me. I had you dead to rights. And I remember going to homicide. And the reason I went to homicide is because homicide, I routinely, when I was in narcotics, worked with homicide. They were like, hey, we need to get in this house. Can you buy drugs from it? I was like, done. I'll go in there, or I have an informant or whatever. So they were like, hey, why don't you come to homicide? And so I did that. But I got scared because in homicide, if you don't get somebody to talk, your case is done. Right. So I remember being very anxious about doing that. Then I got comfortable with it and had really good partners, mentors over there. And I wound up, for some reason, I don't know why, I took the promotional exam. Um, Failed the first one because the first exam was in the wake of my last shooting, which was say 2007. Um, and my head wasn't in it. I failed. And or not to fail, but I didn't make the cut. And then the second time it came around, I guess I passed, and they were like, "Hey, you're getting ready to be a sergeant and hit the street." And I spent almost a year to the day as a supervisor in patrol, which was fucking awesome. I loved it. It was a great time. And then a buddy of mine calls me up. He's like, "Hey, you want to go to Canine?" And our Canine has pretty rigid physical fitness standards. Like I think it mirrored the Marine Corps PFT, and so running and pull ups, push ups, weights, and all that good stuff. And I don't, and I smoke. So I get done with my run and I'm fucking having a cigarette, and they're like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, fuck this, man. I don't know if I could do this all the time, but wound up doing a couple years in Canine, and man, and my dog, I was in a conversation earlier, and my dog saved my life a bunch of times. Guy tried to stab me, my dog bit him. Searching a house by yourself with your dog, and guy comes out the side of the fucking, behind the door, and my dog was on him, and I was like, yeah, right. Um, so I was doing that. My dog, Robbie, who he passed about 2 years ago, and I remember wanting to give him quality of life. So I didn't want to wait till he was all banged up to retire him. So I decided I was asked by one of the assistant chiefs if I would do him a solid and work and be transferred to a unit that needed some help. And I was like, all right. He goes, hey, Chris, this is a high speed unit. I mean, this is the heart and soul of any police department, and I need your help. And I was like, you got it, boss. And so I went to Central Records, which was like going 1,000 miles an hour and then in your car in the reverse.
Slamming on the
And
brakes, screeching home.
I was like, holy, I'm used to, all the running and gunning stuff and kicking indoors. And my first day of working in Central Records as a supervisor for civilians, I walked in and two of the females that were working there were taking their earrings off and like, what bitch? Fuck you. And they started going at it. I'm like, all right, this I can deal with this. This is my kind of talking my language. I like this. Little violence never hurt anybody, right? So
That's good.
wound up doing that. And again, I kind of breezed over it, but this is in the wake of my life just falling to pieces. Again, drinking heavily. Um, I was struggling mentally, couldn't concentrate. And in between that time and then, I had attempted suicide 3 different times. And
Wow.
I was getting awards for my shooting, and I'd gotten the Medal of Honor from my agency. I got the Virginia Public Safety Medal of Valor presented by the government, by the governor. And the following year, I got an award in D.C. for National Top Cop. And I remember thinking, why the fuck am I getting an award commemorating the worst day of my life? And I was bitter, just an angry, was a jerk for lack of a better term. And I started working on myself. I got into treatment. Um, I went to a place in the West Coast Post Trauma Retreat in Napa Valley. And I don't know if you know where Napa is, but it's like the wine capital of the world. And I remember it's a 6-day inpatient dry retreat. And I remember stopping at every fucking vineyard and wine tasting. And I rolled up into that bitch with purple teeth, just ready to get my feeling on. I was like, let's do this. I wanted to be drunk enough so that I didn't have to, kind of deal with it. So I went there. I remember saying something in a mixed group of people. I said at my last shooting, I said, I wish I'd have been shot. And when you say that in the wrong group of people, you get invited to stay at a nice facility for 72 hours where they take your shoelaces and check your asshole. That's these nice facilities that kind of just and I man, I remember just what has my life come to? What the fuck just happened to me? And I was like, I got to a point where I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. I said, fuck this. I said, if I'm going to take myself out, let me just give it a go. Let me find out what I could do to let me understand what this is. And I started working on it and working on it. And then I was like, you know what? I need to learn more. So I switched my major. I mean, I'd already had my bachelor's in criminal justice, which does wonders for you as a retired person. Like, oh, they're just
Right.
banging. Yeah, people are just begging you to. You have a bachelor's in criminal justice. Oh, fucking come run this corporation. And
That's
so
the most expensive piece of paper I own.
yeah, it's crazy, right? But I got it, and I said, you know what? I want to work with people like me who are struggling, who I don't know how I didn't, kill myself, and I wanted to help people. I would talk a piece of shit scumbag off of a ledge, and I wouldn't even take the 4 fucking seconds to take care of myself. And I remember thinking, why the fuck do I care for somebody I don't know and I don't give a shit about me? It was rough. It was a very real conversation I had with myself. And again, getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. And then I started finding all these the resources, and I started really putting in the work. And so by the time I was in Central Records, a lot of people knew because I was very vocal about it. I didn't. I got some really good advice long time ago, and it still counts for today. And it's the day you stop giving a shit about what other people think about you is the day you start getting better. So that's kind of where I was. I didn't care if you thought I was weak or a pussy or whatever because I got help or I saw. I had to see a therapist. I had to see a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I would do anything. I would talk to anybody. I would try any retreat. I will tell you one of the best places I went to, and it's available for cops, all over the country, and it's the law enforcement assistance programs. I'm now on the board with the Virginia Law Enforcement Assistance Program, and they host like 3-day post-critical incident seminars for both the first responder and their spouse. So I'm just phenomenal stuff. So while I was doing that and getting all that stuff kind of situated, people were coming to me. They were like, Chris, I got this kid that's struggling. What do we do? And that happened so much. I said, what the fuck am I doing? I said, you know what? I'm going to start a program for our agency. And I got to give props to where I got it. I looked up the oldest peer support programs in the country. Two came up, and that's Boston peer support program. And at the time, it was being run by a guy named Mark Feary and Jennifer Long over at San Francisco Behavioral Sciences Unit. And I called him up cold. And I was like, hey, man, I want to learn everything about you guys. And Mark was like, yeah, come on. And so I toured there. I toured uh, San Francisco's Behavioral Sciences Unit. And it's funny, I was walking around in Boston, and every time Mark would like walk by something where he had like stacks of paper and shit, I would like steal them, like right, like taking all his shit. And he caught me. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I'm like, I just was taking." He goes, "I will give you all this shit. You don't have to take it." I was like, "Oh, I'm going to steal some shit while I'm over here." So, but yeah, no. So Mark, Mark and I, friends, to this day. He's you meet a couple people along the way that in your journey in life and in work, um, that really kind of guide you. That they act as a push towards your rudder to put you in the right direction. And for me, Mark was that. Obviously, my family and my friends. Uh, I had one friend, one of my partners in narcotics. He'd never heard my shooting story, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, why'd you never ask?" He goes, "Because everybody was fucking asking you." And he goes, I figured if you wanted to talk about it, you would talk about it. Man, it's those kind of things where you take stock and there's people that are just curious for the sense of being curious, and there's people that actually give a shit about you that will sacrifice their curiosity to make sure that you're okay. So people like that, and it came full circle. One of my favorite movies is Rudy, and I've seen a bunch of different things where
Yeah.
he does interviews on how he had these mentors, and I just remember just really jiving with that, and just it kind of made sense. And about a couple years ago, I was asked to speak in Branson, Missouri, and I'm sitting in there, and there's like a little green room, and kind of prepping for this stuff, and in comes this little guy. He's wearing a Notre Dame jacket. And I said, "What the?" I said, "No, it's fucking Daniel Rudiger." As I live and
No
breathe, walked into the fucking room. I said, "You have got to be fucking kidding me." I said, "Rudy." He goes, "Hey, buddy." And we were both in the Navy, which was interesting. I didn't even realize he was in the Navy. But I said, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "Oh, I'm one of the speakers." He goes, obviously the keynote. I was like, "Oh, so I guess I'm not the keynote." Just fucking around with him. Man, so and again, we spoke briefly, and I remember telling him, I was like, "Man, your story, although I didn't play college football, right? I did my own thing, but when you talk about all the people throughout your struggles that kind of are there for you, it just really resonated with me. It was a great time. And like an asshole, I took like 300 pictures with him because he's like, "We're done." I was like, I get it. Listen, I'm embarrassed for myself too, but so I wanted to take that drive and start helping these guys and girls that were struggling. And the best way to do that is because people are scared to kind of come out and say they got an issue. When you come out and you're like, "Hey, I'm Chris, and I've been fucked up, and I've been hung out, and I've done horrible shit, and I felt horrible, but I found a really nice place now." They kind of gravitate towards you, and you feel an obligation to be giving them proper information. And I pride myself on I never give resources that I haven't either personally used or I'm not that I'm specifically intimately involved with or know about, because I don't ever want to tell somebody to do something and then it fucks them up, because that would bother me. I would take ownership of that, and that resonates. And I've worked at facilities, in my retirement, where the doctor will tell them to do something, and the doctor come to me and be like, "Chris, when you run a group or you do one-on-ones, can you talk to this person?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I give them advice, and the guys are like, "Yeah, that's what the doc said." I'm like, "Well, why didn't you fucking listen to the doc?" He's like, well, it sounds better coming from you. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. That makes sense. So that's kind of where we were at. But
So, you talked about how you had 3 attempts, suicide attempts.
yeah.
Were those things that did you share that with anybody? Did anybody know about that, or was that just something you kept to yourself?
Oh, I definitely kept it to myself. I was actually very strategic, and and this when I talk about like the suicide stuff, this is kind of what rings true with a lot of people or familiar with a lot of people. I was very concerned with not doing it in a place that people that knew me, like in a home where they would have to, you know, either the big thing, clean it up, or do it in a familiar place where they would have to always remember that. And I would, or is it a holiday? Or are we close to a holiday? Like what would get ruined? Like that's what I was thinking about. Where could I do this where, it would be the least shitty, uh, like location and time. And one of the last times I did it was actually in DC, when I was getting the award, and I figured, everybody's going to be sad, but my friends, my family, my coworkers were all there so that maybe they can console them, each other. So it was very strategic, very very pointed in how I was going to do it, and I'll tell you, I don't know why I didn't. I don't know that I didn't have. I don't want to say courage. It does take courage to do that, but I don't know. I can't explain why it didn't happen. And I always boast I'd much more rather be lucky than good, and I think that's what it was. And I think I was meant to do some other stuff. All the work stuff is, life and everything is fine, but man, there is nothing more rewarding than helping somebody who was in the same spot you were. It's just it. I mean it's selfish to a certain degree that you're like, helping somebody makes me feel better, but it does, that's the realness of it, you know.
Man, that's really true. And I mean, I'll tell you, I actually, yeah, I went through that myself. I was strategic as well. I had all those things, I didn't want, is family going to find me? Is it going to ruin, I don't want to be at home. I don't want to be here. I went through all that. The one other thing that really started to, really mess with me is when I was, really concerned that this is going to happen and pretty much planning it out that this is what's going to go down. But I thought about, man, what about the first responder that's going to show up here? What about the cop that's got to come? What is that going to do to him? Because he's going to know that I'm an officer. And what is that going to leave behind
Yeah.
for that officer? And that hung heavy on me.
That kind of plays into that plays into you give more shit about somebody else than you do yourself. That's what it boils
Right.
down to. And that's just how we're made
Which
up,
tends to
and
be
if we could take
it
yeah,
tends to be
if we
something
took
that's a
that
common theme that
if we took
all
the
of us
effort
are.
to what we cared about other people and focused on us just for a little bit, man, we'd be so much better. And we don't have to wait till the
That's
wheels
it.
fall off,
Right,
to
and
get
there's
help.
too many,
Right.
and there's too many of us that are waiting until the wheels fall off.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
So
I was.
as you were going, yep, as you were going through everything, did you feel like you were getting support from your agency?
Fuck no. No, I had a
Uh,
lieutenant call me and ask
I kind
me.
of knew the answer. I just wanted to hear it for myself.
No, no, man. I had a lieutenant call me after the shooting goes because I had taken off. You do we had a 3-day admin where you had to go get checked. By the way, seventh shooting, the only time I ever talked to a psychiatrist or psychologist. But he called me up and he says, "Hey, how long are you going to milk this?
Wow.
The what?
How long was I going to milk it?
Holy sh-
How long was I going to milk taking off?" And I got to the point where I was getting so. My partner would pick me up and drive me around till I sobered up enough to walk into the office. That was my existence. And then I'd get Tic Tacs and gum and stay the fuck away from everybody. And then at the end of the day, I would leave, go to, like a bar or something, and then just fuck off, watch TV, and drink. That was my existence for quite a while. So, and that was in the wake of a divorce too. So I mean, it was all sorts of. I joke that nobody ever has one problem. You know what I mean? Like everybody. I'm still looking for that first responder vet that has just one problem. It's usually finances, it's relationship, it's work, it's just everything, and it all happens at once. And another thing, nobody ever goes into crisis at noon. They always fuck off at like 3 or 4 in the morning when that shit falls to pieces.
That's so true. That's so true.
Very inconsiderate.
Yeah, shitty, right?
So that lieutenant's like, quit fucking around, get back in the office.
Yep.
Where did it go from there?
Oh man, again, I wound up just kind of hiding it very well, kind of plugging up some holes mentally, and just kind of pushing on. And I kind of had to get the help on my own. I will say this: I had a captain. This is this is an interesting story, but kind of speaks to where I was at and where they were. But I had a captain who he legitimately gave a shit, and I think it's because he was involved in a shooting as well. And he set up, and I don't use names specifically because it's a shitty story for them, but I got sent to Virginia Beach police department. He goes, I need you to talk to somebody. So I was already pissed off that I had to be sober enough to walk into the fucking precinct to talk to some chooch who wanted to talk to me about, shooting or what. I was like, whatever, man. And so I go into the precinct, and they're like, can we help you? I'm like, yeah, I'm Detective Scallon. I'm here to see so and so. And they're like, all right, hold on a second. 45 minutes I waited in that fucking lobby. I was pissed walking in there. I was at like level 10, right? So this guy comes out and he's wiping his mouth because he had been eating lunch. And he's, oh, okay, you're here. Yeah, come on back. And I was like, all right, let me do it. And the captain set this up. So I go sit in the room, and it was I remember it being like an oddly big, like roll call room, and it just felt weird. But it was me, him, and this female that was in the room, older female. And this guy says, hey man, I know what you're going through. Now at the time, nobody really talked to me about that. And I was like, oh shit, really? I was like, you were involved in a shooting? And he goes, no, but I know somebody who has. I'm like, what? And I said, all right, and who the fuck are you? To the lady, and she goes, I'm Dr. So-and-so. I was like, have you been in a shooting? She goes, no. I said, well, you can go fuck yourself, and you can go fuck yourself. And I left. I get like maybe 5 minutes down the road, and my captain calls me up. He goes, all right, so I understand it didn't go so well. I was like, fuck those people. This sucks. This is bullshit. And to his credit, he goes, all right. Rather than getting mad at me, which he had every right to, because I was a dick, right? But he goes, give me a chance. Now, I will mention this guy's name because he's probably the main reason I'm still around. And I think he retired as a lieutenant with the Chesapeake Police Department. His name is Mike. And just a real quick background. I got in a divorce. My house that I was bought out of is in Chesapeake, Virginia, or was in Chesapeake, Virginia. And one of the shitty, I'm again, as a New Yorker, I hate a lot of the Southern shit that goes on here. And the biggest one I don't like the taste. Is Chick-fil-A, and I hate fucking sweet tea. It's gross. It's disgusting. I don't like it. Right. So this guy I say that because the guy goes, hey, do you know where let's meet up? I said, sure. He goes, meet me at the Chick-fil-A at, in this so-and-so area in Chesapeake, which is like right down the road from my house, or my old house, where my ex-wife is living with some other guy from the police department now. And so I was like, and we're at Chick-fil-A, and I hadn't been eating. I'd lost like 50 pounds because I was just drinking and not eating or whatever. And he sits down there. We sit down. He goes, you want something to eat? I'm like, I don't want fucking anything from this shithole, right? And no offense against God's Chicken. I know a lot of people love that place, but
that's the Lord's chicken right there.
Who the fuck puts pickles on chicken? It's just fucking gross. Anyway, I go
It's the
sit
South. We put
down.
pickles on all kinds of stuff.
Fucking gross, man. So I sit down and I'm a mess and I look bad. And he sat and talked to me. I must have talked to him for about 2, 3 hours. And not once did the shooting come up. And I remember feeling like, I was like, all right. He goes, listen, Chris, I'm not a doctor. I'm like, yeah, no shit. You're eating at Chick-fil-A and you're dressed in uniform. By the way, he was in uniform. We were sitting in a Chick-fil-A. I was like, yeah, no shit. And he goes, if you don't get help, you're going to implode. And the guy I was talking to, Mike, um, he had lost his partner in a bank robbery. His partner was killed. So out of the gate, I had a rapport with him. I was like, he gets it. He had a loss, and I said, interestingly enough, this is the longest I've talked to anybody, and we didn't talk about the shooting. He goes, why the fuck would I talk to you about the shooting? He goes, you probably talked to everybody at nauseum about all this shit. And it was like the first like relief. Like we were talking, I don't even know what we were talking. It was stupid shit, whether baseball or whatever. But I remember when he gave me the advice, he goes, you need to get help. And I was living in my friend's above his like garage, and he was constantly having parties, and which was fit perfectly for me to be drinking and everything. And I was downstairs, and a buddy of mine who on the department who shot and killed somebody as well looked at me, and we're in a party, right? It's everybody's drinking, having a good time, and he's like, "Dude, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm fine." He goes, "Dude, you look like shit." Like first, everybody else kind of tiptoes around it. I looked like absolute garbage. I'd gone from 250 pounds to about 190, 195. I'd lost a ton of weight. I wasn't eating. I was just drinking every day. And he goes, dude, you need help. And I'm like, whatever, man. And he's like, no, call this guy. Now I figured this guy had gone to, if this guy trusts this person, I'd go to him. And I wanted to go and see this doctor over at, in Portsmouth over at Churchland Psychiatric Associates, which is, it was weird because when you walk into the office, the left, if you make a left, you're an inpatient, which I've been there. I don't like that. So I used to get very anxious and I walk in, hug the right side of the wall to go, I'm just visiting, like in Monopoly, you're either in jail or visiting. I was like, I'm just visiting. I don't want anybody to take the Kool-Aids, right? So I go to the right and I took stock of where my life was. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm looking at this guy who's fucking obviously out of his mind, talking to nobody, but he's having a conversation. This other guy is like licking the fucking seat, and this other guy, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Blah, blah, blah. And I realized I was talking to myself in the waiting room of a fucking psychiatric facility. And I'm like, holy shit. Okay, maybe I do belong here. And, it was one of those things where you're like, I guess that is what it is. And I remember thinking, I don't want anybody to know that I'm here. And of course, the doctor comes out and goes, Scallon. And I'm like, God damn it. Like, why would you call my name? And I sat in with him and he goes, Chris, I'm not a cop. Never been a cop, but I've treated tons of cops. And so I was like, okay. So I started talking to him, blah, blah, blah. And he yawns and he's like, okay. I'm like, hey, man, am I boring you? He goes, oh, you're saying something? Oh, if you want to talk about real shit, like why you're here, I'm all in. But if you want to just blow smoke up my ass, I'll take your money. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Aren't you supposed to be nice to me? He goes, that ain't my job. And I'm like, holy shit. So he got me talking and he got, and I needed some help with some medication and kind of tapering it down, whether it be anti-anxiety or antidepressive medication. And wind up getting diagnosed with acute depression with suicidal ideation, post-traumatic stress, um, and later on got diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury from the military. And I remember thinking, "Wow, this has a name." I got it. It sounds weird, but I got excited, and in the same breath, I was like devastated. I'm like, "Fuck yes, this is something." And I'm like, "Oh shit, that means I have something, right?" Like struggling with something. And I remember it was a weird kind of feeling, both happy and sad at the same time. But that was it. That was the beginning of me, just like whatever it takes, man. Whatever I got to do, whatever stupid shit I think is stupid, I'm just going to do it, 100%. and I started getting better. And that just kind of rolled into, creating the unit over in the police department. And I founded the unit and kicked it off. And my predecessors just ran it up and took it to the next level. And it just, again, it took me in a different direction. And I chose to kind of spend the rest of my time on this rock, just trying to help as many people as I can, or at least connecting with them, because you can't help everybody. And if telling somebody my goofy ass story kind of helps them in some way, or helps them reach out, I'll tell my goofy story all day long. That's an easy thing to do. And just being there for somebody. And it's the sad thing is, not sad, but you really don't know how many people you help. And then occasionally somebody will come out, and I was teaching something, certification course, and a guy comes up to me, hands me a little package with like a business card. Normally, somebody will hand me a coin. I love coins, whatever, but they'll hand me a coin, and I got the coin and put it in my pocket. At the end of the class, I took it out, check it out, and it was a business card with a bullet. And I'm like, and before the individual left, I'm like, excuse me, and I said, what is this? He goes, I don't know if you remember, but you talked to me for about 3 hours on the phone. I said, I talked to a lot of people. So I said, when was it? And he was like, oh, it was this time, this time, this time. I was like, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. He goes, that was the bullet I was going to kill myself with that night. And I was like, so why are you giving this to me? He goes, that's a token of appreciation. I was like, all right, I was hoping you didn't want me to do it. Like for me, like here, do you take this bullet, you piece of shit? I wanted to make sure that the meaning was understood. So it, like, little things like that'll happen. Or somebody like years later will come by and be like, hey man, I was struggling and I didn't say anything, but I heard what you said and I started doing this, this, and this. And I mean, I talked with the guys over at Trauma Behind the Badge, Raul, Doug, and Chris, and Karen, Doug's wife. And um, that's our goal, man. Just one person, just to help one fucking person and stop all this other bullshit and, you know, this posturing like I'm great. I have a great story, and just fucking help somebody, man. Because we eat our own in this industry, and even outside of
Yes,
it,
we
and
do.
inspiring. And there's so many people capitalizing on first responders and veterans that it's just fucking disgusting. And for, if by chance I get to help somebody, and again, if somebody, because these folks help me constantly, I had a guy with no fucking leg, got blown up. I was doing a group, and I remember I hit my pinky, like my toe on the bed when I was going in to do group work, and I was complaining about my toe hurting. He goes, "Oh no, your toe hurts? Guy's got no legs." And he was making fun of me. I was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you, man?" He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, your toe hurts." Yeah, so that's that.
Uh, I guess I'm really impressed that you got this up at your agency.
Oh,
Yeah,
dude,
so that
no
was
one's
a
more
fierce
impressed than I
support
was.
group.
Yeah, I didn't. I asked for $10,000, and I'll tell you how I did it, because a lot of people always ask me about that. Um, the chief, I said, "Can I have a meeting with the chiefs?" And it's super easy to start a new unit in an agency that's understaffed and cutting programs and doing all this stuff. So I was like, they're like, "You
Yeah.
got 15 minutes, and you have maybe one, or you do a presentation." So I had a 3 slide presentation, and I said, "We have a bomb squad." I was in line to be the supervisor of the bomb squad, and I wound up doing this other stuff. And the guy that got it's a phenomenal guy. He's great, great, deserving of it. But I used that as an example. I said, "How much money do we spend on our bomb squad?" And I'm hundreds of thousands of dollars for training and all this stuff and equipment. Got to buy the fucking robots and Johnny Five and oil and whatever, right? I said, "How many fucking bombs in the last 20 years have we had?" We blew some douchebag's book bag up who left it outside the mall, and we found a fake pipe bomb. That was it. Last 20 years. And we are spending hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Okay. In the last 20 years, same amount of time, how many cops have killed themselves? And at the time, it was 12. And it is hard to say no when you put that out there like that. And so they said, "Well, what do you want?"
Mm.
I said, "I want $10,000 to start this program, and I want my own thing, standalone." And they were like, "Do it." And oddly enough, the chief came up to me when we were done. He goes, I'm going to do this, but I don't believe in this shit. I think people should just suck it up. And I'm like, well, thanks.
Oh, God, damn.
So I took the $10,000 and I hired 2 speakers for 5,000 apiece and came back with them like the next month. And I'm like, all right, I need 20,000. And and then I started getting grant funding. And so it worked out pretty well. Um, Again, more lucky than good. But yeah, it just kind of kicked off. And I started getting calls from assistant chiefs, captains, lieutenants. They're like, hey, man, I don't know how to deal with this or what's going on with this, or if there was a shooting or if somebody hurt themselves or we had a suicide or, another bad incident. They were calling me. So it started really working. And when I left the department, it's only because it was for a job working at a mental health facility, to help first responders and veterans. So I had to go, but Rich Creamer, who does a lot of work, and I've worked with him. I think he works over at Lighthouse now, but he did a phenomenal job. Listen, we went from it was me and this guy John who was in recovery, and now he's a counselor. He's a substance abuse counselor at a huge facility, and he just retired. And he was a combat medic and in the army, and it was just me at one point for a good year or so, and then I got John in, and they're like, "Why do you want a drunk there?" And I'm like, "Well, who best to talk to drunks than another drunk, you know?" And then
Yep.
I left, and then Rich came in, took over. Now they bought they got a therapy dog, goes to roll calls and all this stuff. And then when Rich left, because he just left, and they got some other folks coming in to do the work. They set up a whole wellness program where there's a fitness center, there's you know a float therapy, there's chiropractor, there's holistic healing, and it's part of the contract for both the fire and the police department. So listen, from the days of me sitting in a broom, literally a broom closet, they moved the janitor stuff out and put me in there. Uh, to now they had their own big office, and it's nice to see that it had grown and they become somewhat of a leader in the mental health and first responder industry. So it's just pretty
I'm
for me. It's an attaboy. I appreciated that.
I'm genuinely impressed because Denny. I mean, up our way.
Yeah.
Can you think of anybody who's got anything that is even remotely close to that? I
Um,
cannot.
no, I mean, I know Chesterfield's working on it. They're getting better. I mean, they have a peer support team, and and they're getting better. But it's still got a little ways to go. But I think the chief there does embrace it, and I think they're looking at trying to create a whole wellness program. I do think they are looking at it. That's the last word I got, that they're looking at creating that whole total wellness program. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, it's what you're talking about is it's like a totally different planet from anything I've heard of
Yeah, but you know what?
before
I'll tell you
at
this.
an agency.
And I talked to a lot of agencies. You're not. Most agencies don't have something like that, and they're like, yeah, we don't. I'll talk to somebody. They're like, we don't even have a peer team. I was like, let me ask you a question. If someone came up to you and asked you for help, would you help them? Yeah, you got a fucking peer team. It's maybe not formalized, but you got a peer team. What the only difference is when you start formalizing it. And one of my clinical director, her name was Jackie. She was like the number 2 at community services. She goes, Chris, and I use this to this day. She goes, Chris, you are building the plane while you're flying it. And it is such an appropriate analogy
Yeah.
because you need to build these resources at the same time you got people coming in that need the help. And you need to help people
Mhm.
that just I had a guy come into my office in a little tiny office, right? And he yelled like in my office about what he was like. He wasn't yelling at me. He was talking at me, right? And he gets done like 15 minutes. I haven't said a fucking word. And he goes, "You're good, Chris." And I'm like, damn right I am. I have no idea what the hell I did. He just needed somebody to talk to, right? So I had that, and then I had a
Yeah.
cop who
Yeah. No
had
doubt.
taken a 30-day prescription of Adderall in 7 days and been up for 2 weeks, who's actively hallucinating in the fetal position. So you need that resources for that and that guy and everything in between, and just it's work in progress. And you're not going to help everybody. You can help as many people as you can, but it's tough. It's you're not going to get credit for it. I'm not going to get an award for helping 5 drunk cops get into rehab. Yeah, they tend to frown on
Right.
kind of publicizing that.
Yeah, you won't get the golden beer can.
No, but even though your chief's saying I think this is bullshit, blah blah, they gave you the
Yeah.
money, they stood up the unit, it went forward and grew. So
Yeah, that's a victory.
yeah, exactly. I mean,
Hey, Chris, you also do you have that
Yeah.
Trauma Behind the Badge that you're a co-founder of. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So Trauma Behind the Badge was the brainchild of myself, Doug Monda, who's retired Cocoa Beach or Cocoa PD SWAT. He was commander out there, huge athlete, Ironman triathlon. Um, Raul Rivas, who was on the Orlando SWAT he was there at the Pulse nightclub shooting. And Chris Fields, who's a firefighter in Oklahoma, he was there, got inadvertently made famous when he was carrying out a child that had passed from the Oklahoma City bombing. And we all kind of got together. We saw each other speaking in different places, and we kind of just we hit it off immediately. And we're like, hey man, we need to do something to kind of help other people that we were kind of doing our own things in our own silos, and we're like, hey, why don't we just get together? And it literally is like they're my brothers, and Karen, Doug's wife, is like my sister. There was immediate chemistry as far as rapport and everything like that, and mutual respect. And we're like, well, what can we do? And we're like, hey man, let's do a podcast, and you know just have a dialogue, so that if you're struggling and maybe you don't want to share, but maybe listening to, these four ding dongs talk about their shit show of a career and life, maybe that'll help you out. And we modeled it as having a conversation in the back parking lot of a precinct or around the dinner table at a firehouse. Talk about real shit, funny stuff, sad stuff, ugly stuff, and just be real about it and kind of help people connect with resources that are available throughout the country. And it took off, and I mean, we still go all over the country, either speaking or helping folks out. And somebody will call the show or email us and be like, hey, we know somebody that's struggling. Do you have resources? And just helping people out like that. And it's as we're getting busy, like I'm busy with work. I specifically work with first responders and vets in treatment, and so I travel a lot for work, around the country. But if I try to fit it in, and we do all the main conferences, and we get invited to go, and which is nice. Um, so that's kind. It's very simple project. We just wanted to do it, and we wanted to help people, and we love hanging out with each other. I will tell you, in doing this work, when you're helping other people, you can start taking a lot of emotional baggage. And there's a couple times where I needed help, and I didn't ask. Funny, I preach it, but at the time I was like, let me not talk about this, and they just knew, and they, offline, I'd Raul or Chris or Doug be like, what the fuck is going on, man? Are you okay? Do you need something? Blah blah blah, and they've helped me out. You know, so it's that kind of relationship. It's not. I don't want anybody to think, oh, Chris has got it all together. It's a struggle, man. Every day's a struggle. Some days are better than others. I like helping other people, but there comes a time where sometimes, and I said this on a previous show that I was doing, that our desire to help people is often outweighed by our inability, and we can kind of overextend ourselves. So I mean, I speak to my friends, very honestly, like, hey man, there was a time where I was like, I can't do this. Had a show planned, and I was like, I'm not in a good space to do it. I don't feel good. I'm exhausted mentally. I've had a long, just bad call after bad call after bad call, and I'm retired. And it seems like I work more now, and I hear and see more stuff that
mm,
Yeah.
kind of weighs heavily. But that's what we are. That's
Yep.
what we do, and we connect people with some great stuff. And along the way, we've met some amazing people. There's hashtag Buddy Check, who is former Marine, former law enforcement, who is out there just just check on your buddies. Make sure that he or she is okay. With Meg, make everything good. I sent you the links and stuff. Survive First is another big one. The Quell Foundation,
Yep.
Lighthouse, just phenomenal stuff. Great people.
Well, that's awesome.
And that, there's so much to be said for just checking in on your friends. Just how you
Oh
doing.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Just
Yeah.
I did that today, actually.
That alone has probably saved lives.
Yeah. Easy. Oh shit, yeah. Shit, yeah. Doug has a real good thing. He calls somebody, and if they're like, if they're feeling down, and he randomly calls people, and it's that he's worked with, and he goes, "Hey, brother, tell me one good thing that's happening." And even if just it's something little, it gets them thinking about something positive, which is, listen, man, when you're in a dark place, there's a little story that little anecdotal kind of story, right? There's a cop, and he falls in this hole, real deep, real dark hole, and he's down in there, and he's struggling. He or she's struggling, and this priest walks by, and cop's like, "Hey, man, can you help me? Can you help me?" And the priest is like, "No, but I can pray for you." And the priest kind of walks off, and cop's still in the hole, and then this doctor walks by. He's like, "Hey, doc, come on, can you help me? I'm stuck in this hole. I can't get out." And the doc goes, "No, but I can write you a prescription when you get out. Maybe that'll help." And so this cop is sitting in there. And again, you could change cop, fireman, dispatch, whatever. And then this other cop walks by, and the cop's in the hole starts yelling, "Hey, man, before he can finish the statement or the question, this cop jumps down in the hole with him. And the guy's like, "Hey, asshole, now we're both stuck in the hole." And the cop looked at him and said, "Yeah, but I've been here before, and I know the way out." And that's, it's one of those things that's our mantra. We've been there. And if you don't have to go through what we had to go through, then we're winning. We're doing something. Um, it's powerful, and it was powerful for me the first time I heard it, and I heard it in a group setting, and it just made sense. And if again, we eat our own, so no one's going to look out for us like us but us. So I think that's the beauty of doing what we kind of do, and what people that help other first responders and vets do. We don't get rich doing this, but we get rich emotionally and in life, I think, by helping people. So that's, again, I just wanted to kind of throw that in there.
Yeah, no, man, that is awesome. That's pretty good. I've not heard that before, but that's pretty good. I'll hang on to that. But
When you
steal
when you said you weren't successful, it's like you weren't successful with harming yourself.
Correct.
Some higher power was at work. I'm convinced.
Oh yeah, yeah, man. I worked, and I've been around some people in some situations that you really can't explain it, other than that God was looking out for you. That's just the way it is. That's my belief. I don't want to, I don't want to yuck anybody else's yum and what they believe in, but that's what I believe. And
No, I mean,
I'm telling you,
call it what you will, but
I'm with you on
there
that
was
one.
something in play there. I'm convinced.
definitely. And again, I'm glad that that's there. And I've dealt with or been introduced to folks. There's a great guy, and I always mention his name, Jason Schechterly, Arizona cop that was hit in his police car and got blown up, and like 140% of his body burnt up, lost fingers, and this and that. And this guy's got, again, the stars lined up for him. Then he's alive, and he speaks all over the place. And I got a chance to speak with him in, I think it was in Indiana, and also in Vegas. And man, this guy's been through the ringer, and just the attitude he has. And he attributes a lot of that stuff to, listen, there's somebody looking out for him, and it's just, I don't question it, and there's some people that are like, you can't do this job and not question, and there's a clinical term for it. It's like a crisis of faith that, how could God do something this bad or expose me to this and exist? And I think things are put in our way, and I think things happen to us because if they happen to somebody else, something dire would happen. So, again, however you wanted to explain it, but that's how I see it. But definitely higher power, 100%.
Yep, I agree 100%. But man, Chris, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, and thank you for everything that you're doing. It's just amazing work.
Oh, I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate it, and thank you for for having me on. And anything I can do to help you guys out, and I'll send me the link, and we'll promote it on our website and Trauma Behind the Badge and everywhere I go. We need more people like you guys to open this dialogue up. It's so needed, and you guys are doing great work, man.
Well, thanks so much, Chris, and we'll talk to you soon. But man, thank you again.
Anytime, brothers. Anytime. And if you guys need anything, just reach out, and look forward to hearing from you guys.
Yep. And you as well.
Take care, Chris.
All right, guys.
Man, Al, what a good dude, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Great. Just, that's quite a story.
Yeah. I mean, all that he has seen and done. Yeah, that's just,
I can't imagine.
No, I mean,
yeah,
a lot. And then all that he's doing for first responders now, just incredible.
Oh, so. Yeah. Just to be able to come back and to give back that way. I mean, really impressive.
Yeah, no doubt. I was so glad we got to have him on. Yeah, definitely. That's a great guest. All right, well, you know that sound. That's going to close us out for this episode. Man, it was great to have Chris Scallon on. Excellent guest. But in the meantime, if you'd like to reach out to us here at Badge to the Bone Podcast, you can shoot us an email at wearebadgetothebone@gmail.com. That is wearebadgetothebone@gmail.com. Also, we have a website, and that's pretty simple, badgetothebone.com. Check out our website. We've still got some swag available. Don't forget, we also have a Facebook page, so check us out on there. We appreciate all the people that are following us. We appreciate all the great comments. Let us know what you think. Reach out. Give us some ideas of what you think or what you may want to hear us talk about. But in the meantime, for all those first responders out there, we're thinking about you. And as always, be safe and be well.